Hi and welcome back. So hopefully these videos are helping you feel a little more confident about starting your book club. So now that we've gotten all of the nuts and bolts in place, let's start looking at what your actual weeks of study look like. So you're going to feel a lot more confident if you have a plan going into each of your meetings. So our first week, we have always done an author study, and this is something that over the years has never changed. There's been many things we've tweaked and changed, but this has never been broken, so we have never fixed it. Now, there are two styles of author study activities that we do that have really been home runs. And so, what I actually do is I go back and forth with them. So, I'm going to start out by talking about the first method. We call this the timeline. So, number one, timeline. It is very much exactly what it sounds like. What you're going to do is get yourself a roll of masking tape that you can tape down in a line across the floor. This is the timeline that's going to represent your author's life. Now, if you don't have masking tape or you don't have a surface to stick it on, you could use a rope. You could use streamers. Tape works nice because it stays put and it's not going to wiggle around. But if you use a rope, you could just tape the two ends of it. You'll make it work. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your author and you're going to do a biographical study on them and just learn everything from the time they were born to the time they died or whether they're still alive. You're going to look at the events through their life, where they were born and grew up, what did their childhood look like, where did they go to school? What kind of hobbies did they have? Just anything that you can find on your author. And fortunately, there are just a ton of resources out there to help you do this. So, looking online, a lot of authors actually have their own website. So, you can go there and get lots of information about your author, and you'll know that the information on their website is correct also. So, there are, with especially older authors, the information can get a little bit dicey over the years. But you could read a biography on them. You could watch a biography on this author. There's just so many resources to find out information about them. So I usually just take a notebook and I compile that information. I keep it in chronological order until I've gone pretty thoroughly through the author's life. Now, the next thing that I do is I'm going to get a basket or box of some sort because I'm going to collect a bunch of items. So every event or just detail of your author's life, I'm going to try to find some sort of an object that symbolizes or represents that. So, for instance, if your author loved to draw growing up, I might put a box of crayons in there. This is just going to represent drawing. You could put in pencils, you could put in markers, you could put in a notepad, whatever you want to do. Let's say that your author loved to read and was really inspired by the story of Robin Hood. We'll stick a book of Robin Hood in there. If you don't have Robin Hood, you could print a page with the cover of Robin Hood. You could draw just the title on there and tape it onto a book. Just do something to represent Robin Hood. The other thing that is extremely helpful is to have a good atlas on hand. So I will find out, say, where our author was born. And I'll go ahead of time and get a Post-it note and I will mark that inside the atlas. And then I'll put this in the basket. So once you've gone through, you've collected something to symbolize each element of their life, gathered into the basket, and then take it to your meeting. You're going to take those objects and pass them out to each of the kids. Now, as you go through and you start to talk about your author, if you want to read through your list or just talk about them, because now that you've studied them, you have a pretty good idea about their life. As you come to each event or detail of their life, you're going to ask the kids if they can try to decide whether or not the object that they're holding is the one that represents what you're talking about. So what this would look like a little more specifically is with that box of crayons. You might be talking about your author and you might say, when they were a child and their mom couldn't find them and they were, hiding someplace in the house, they were usually doing this because they just loved to spend all of their spare time doing this. And then you wait and see if the kids can look over what they have on hand and decide who might have the object that represents that. So then somebody, whoever's holding the crayons, they'll say, "Oh, did they like to draw?" And say, "Yes, they were always escaping someplace, hiding and just drawing all the time." So then that kid that has the box of crayons is going to come up and is going to lay that item on the timeline. So this is why you want to go in chronological order, because their objects are going to go along that timeline. So by the time you're finished, the kids will be able to see the life of their author and everything that kind of represents their life along the way. So this is really helpful for the younger ones that are still trying to grasp um, chronological order of things. This helps to kind of cement in that in their mind. This really helps with learning geography. So as you're pulling up the atlas and you're saying, "Oh, our author was born in England," well, you're going to open it up to Europe and you're going to help them to find where England is in there. And so you're really going to help them to have an idea of the location. The other thing you could do is if your author travels several different places, you could walk through that with them in the atlas, or you could have a printout of a map and they could actually mark it on their map as you talk about it. But it's going to really help cement some of this in their mind. If you're asking questions about what they traveled in and somebody has a tire of some sort, so they'll say, "Oh, it was a car, an automobile," it's going to help them with just understanding the timeline and time frame as far as when was the automobile invented. So it's going to help them to have a better idea of what was going on in the world at the time that their author was alive or is still alive. Now, if you have some events or things that are really hard to come up with an object for, then I typically will go online and print pictures to represent that. I might take a Post-it or an index card and draw a picture. For instance, maybe your author is going to get married and you don't want to necessarily bring a ring in for the kids because it might get lost. Draw a picture of a ring and it can represent that really well. When it comes to dates for birth and death, if your author has passed away, then that's a really great thing to put on an index card, and you'll have 2 dates. And so the kids right off the bat, they have to decide, is this the birth year or is this the death? And it helps, and again, with just dates and times and helping them to kind of cement that in their mind. So that is our timeline game. The second game that we do is one that we call right, left. Now, this one, the beauty of it is it takes a lot less prep time. The timeline, I mean, you'll get the hang of it and you'll be able to gather up objects pretty quickly, but there is a little bit of a time commitment ahead of time just getting all of those objects put together. Now with time, right, left, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to compile your information on your author, but this time you don't have to gather any objects. You're just going to show up wherever your location is. You're going to gather the kids together and you're going to explain that you're going to tell them a fact about your author and they're going to have to decide, because you're going to actually tell them a fact and you're going to tell them why. And they're going to have to decide which one is true. Now, what you'll tell them is that if they think, A is the correct answer, they'll go to the right. If they think B is the correct answer, they'll go to the left. So let's go back to our author. Maybe they were born in England. So you'll say, if our author was born in England or Australia, if you think they were born in England, go to the right. If you think they were born in Australia, go to the left. And so they'll have to run to one side of the room or the other side, or outside if you're, that's even more fun because they have more space to run. But they'll have to run to one side or the other. And then after everybody's settled, you'll tell the answer and you'll either get cheers or boos or whatever. So then have them all come back to the middle, and then you're going to go on with your next question. Um, Now, one caveat, I do usually have to tell them we're going to play this, quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 4 hours as we go through every part of our author's life, because they'll tend to get excited and want to be talking on the sidelines, and it'll be a little bit hard to get them back together. But if you just explain that, we want to get on to the next question and they can go try again, they usually will respond pretty well. So once again, I would do that in chronological order. So it's helping them to really cement the order of events in their author's life. And so both games, big hits. I don't know that I could say that one is more of a favorite than the other one. I would say you should use it based on your schedule. So if you do timeline, you're going to need a little bit more prep time. But if you do right left, you're going to need a location that has a little bit more space for running back and forth. So we alternate back and forth just to keep things interesting. But you could do that however you like. Now, one of the reasons that I think author study is so important is because it is really helps make those connections as they're reading the story. And like I had said a couple of videos before, we like to ask the question, what is the secret message that this author is trying to teach us? And so as we're discussing that each week, what we found is the events that happened in that author's life profoundly affect their secret message. So, for example, J.M. Barrie, he wrote Peter Pan. Well, in our author study, we found out he had a very tragic childhood. There was a death of his little brother, and his mom suffered just a lot of mental just strife because of that. And so to cheer his mother up, he would dress up in his little brother's clothes, and he would continually just kind of act out for her that he was his little brother, just so that she wouldn't be so sad. And so you can really see where this idea of Neverland and the boys that never grow up, it came from his childhood and this thing that he was doing to try to help cheer his mother up. And at the end of the story, as they find out they do have to actually grow up, it's bittersweet. It's really a sad thing when you actually see how it's connected to his childhood, but it's extremely impactful, and it helps you to see how these authors are processing these different things that have happened in their life, and you see it come out in the story. Another example is if you do an author study on Charles Dickens and you find out that he grew up in the workhouse because his father had racked up a bunch of debt, and so he had to endure that. And but then you read stories of Oliver Twist and Christmas Carol and all these different pieces start to really come together, and you see that he was speaking from a place of something that he actually experienced as a child, and he's really pushing a message out there. Um, and so that's where I think the author study is just so important to see where these authors are coming from. Now, I will give one other caveat. Some authors have very disturbing lifestyles also, and so they're as leader of the group. And when I look at the ages that I'm working with, sometimes I'll actually edit the author's timeline a little bit. I don't change it, but I definitely have details that I will leave out. Um, One of those, E. Nesbitt, when we did a study on her, I mean, fantastic writer. But at the same time, there was definitely some details that I just thought I don't necessarily want to start some of these conversations. This is more for parents to have some of these conversations with the kids. So definitely just use wisdom in that and deciding how you want to approach each event in their life. So I hope that this helps you out. I hope that between timeline and right left, that you feel more confident and ready to do your first meeting. If you do like we do and you do this as the first study for every single book, then as you go through, you already know exactly what you're going to do for your first week of book club for every single book. And for me, that brings comfort in just having a plan already in place. Um, if you end up having any questions or just you have other ideas that you'd like to put forth on author studies, that would be great. Just add it to the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. We're going to go next video. We're going to start talking about the second week of book club and what we do during that time and giving you ideas to go from there. Also, if you did not watch the video before this one, it was just on the nuts and bolts, how to get your club started, how to make those decisions. And there's a free printable that you can just click on the link that's in the description. It'll take you straight to the page. You can print it out and just work step by step through it to get all of your details together. So I hope you're enjoying these videos. I hope they're helpful, and I will see you next time.